This podcast is dedicated to the celebration and preservation of the working Australian Shepherd. Your Aussie is descended from a proud and amazing lineage of hard-working ranch dogs, identified and cultivated primarily in the Wild West. Contrary to the breed name, the Australian Shepherd is actually an American breed success story. Only in America can a blue-eyed, scruffy dog rise from the dust of the American ranch to become one of the most popular breeds in the world today. The Aussies' beauty, brains, and incredible work ethic and almost empathic connection with their human charges make them unforgettable and pivotal members of the family. My goal is to help you understand this amazing breed, learn more about their heritage and their physical and mental needs so that together we can preserve the working Aussie by encouraging better breeding and better vetting of future Aussie owners, ultimately keeping Aussies with their families and out of shelters. Welcome to the Instinctive Australian Shepherd. Hey everybody, this is Jackie Tinker. Welcome to the Instinctive Australian Shepherd podcast. I have a very exciting guest today, but first of all, you'll notice I'm wearing my Working Aussie Source hat because the Futurity is coming up soon. The Working Aussie Source Futurity is coming up soon. I would love for you guys to check that out. So go to our sister page, workingaussiesource.com, and check that out and join the Working Aussie Source group as well as the Instinctive Aussie podcast group in Facebook, and you'll have all the details and you could support what we do with working dogs. So today our guest is Kat from the UK, and I'm super excited to have her. And she is not in herding sports, but she has a working dog. So there's different definitions of working dog, and this is a really great way, super exciting stuff she does with her Australian Shepherds. So I'm going to list a couple of her accomplishments. There are a lot of really great accomplishments, and then I'm going to let her talk about how she got into Aussies and brag about her dogs. And then also, guys, I'm going to try and remind you at the end of this podcast too, link to her Facebook, and we'll get her contact information at the end, and watch the videos because the videos of her dogs working are epic. So she's involved in IGP, which we'll talk about a lot more during this podcast. And she's done Crufts Obedience Championship. And Crufts is like the big, I think it's just the English. It's in England, right? It's the very competitive, very, very competitive obedience championship with like top level obedience stuff. And most of the people she's competing against are border collies. It used to be golden retrievers, right? Like that was the obedience breed for a while ago, and then now border collies. And maybe for you guys it's always been border collies, but here in the US it used to be golden retrievers were the main obedience dog, and then border collies because, well, border collies. And I guess we're probably gonna start seeing Malinois in that area pretty soon too, but a lot more. So she's has had the highest placed female Australian Shepherd in Crufts Obedience Championships. Gracie, one of her dogs, is the third female Aussie Obedience Champion in history, and I'll let you talk a little bit more about what that entails because it's different across the pond than it is here. Her current dog, Gracie, is the only living Aussie Obedience Champion and the only Aussie Working Champion class. So we'll talk about what that means too. Kat has competed at Crufts Obedience Championships 5 times, which is, it's a big deal, guys. And I'm hoping through this conversation that those of you that are listening will start expanding your knowledge a little bit of what's out there for our dogs and the things that we can challenge them with, and all the things that just make our dogs amazing. So Crufts is a big deal. She's on the first homebred female Australian Shepherd champions and the first mother-daughter champions of Aussies as well. And now Gracie competes in IGP, which is the old word for Schutzen. It was Schutzen back in like the 80s when I first got into this, and then it was something else, and then now it's AGP. So it's changed in the last probably 15, 20 years 3 times. But she's the only Aussie to qualify at IGP 3 in UK history, and now she's competed at the national level in IGP. And they are aiming to be the first Aussie worldwide to compete at the IGP World Championships. And again, this is, exciting stuff. And this is, guys, top level. You have to watch the videos to, even if you've never heard of Schutzen or IGP or you haven't seen it in a while, it's changed. We were talking about this just before we started this podcast, that IGP has changed when it was Schutzen, the dogs, the we'll talk about it more later, but it's top level. So welcome to the podcast and thank you for reaching out to me and thank you for taking the time to meet with us and talk to us.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Jackie, and thank you for all you do for working Aussies. It's always great to hear you and the people you have on your pod.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I always ask the guests to talk about how they first got into Aussies and what that journey was, and then how you got yourself into what you're doing now. So go ahead and share that with us.
Yeah, I knew that I was going to get into Aussies when I was 10 years old.
Awesome.
I remember I was into dogs. I was more into dogs than it's crazy nuts about them. And I got a copy of it was called the Our Dogs Annual. It was the annual of all the things going on in dogs. And it said the first Aussies have been imported into the UK in that year. And I think it was
Wow.
1995. Um, and I remember looking at that picture, I cut it out and I said, when I grow up, that's what I'm going to have. I lived in London with my family who weren't at all into dogs. And I could see that this was a dog who needed activities, needed things to do. And I was like, yeah, no, this is not a family dog. This is not a child's dog. I need to wait until I'm grown up. But I put the picture on my wall and I said, this is what I'm going to do. When I was
Good for you.
29, I decided I'm grown up now.
I can do it now.
That's right. That's right. So I got my first Aussie, and she was just, it was slightly different life because I wasn't into dog sports at that stage. I just wanted to do stuff. I wanted to train and get into and find out about what this dog could be capable of. And I love dogs and I just wanted to get a really great connection. And she was a fantastic little dog. She was a real sweetheart, show line, just a cutie pie, lovely dog, sort of very versatile, would do a little bit of agility, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and just love to snuggle. So
That's what they
that
love
kind
best, right?
right. And that kind of got me into the breed. And then I wanted to find out, okay, what else can I do? What else can I do with these guys? Where else can we take this? And then my story is basically a couple of generations on from her. I bred Shanti, who was my first obedience champion. And when I bred her to be a show dog. But she had something about her, and I was just like, oh, okay. I went to a few shows with her and I was just like, this dog's lost on this. This is not what she is meant to be doing.
She requires more.
She needs more. That's right. And she was super, super smart. So, okay, I'm going to find out how to do stuff with her. And originally, I'd learned how to train dogs in the traditional way. And with my first Aussie, it was tradition. She was traditionally taught. It was, a forced hold and retrieve. And no wonder the dog would do it. I'll do it because, they're pleasing dogs. I'll
Yeah.
do it to please you. There was no joy in her work. She didn't really want to do it. And I decided to learn how to do clicker training. And that changed everything for me. And that changed everything for the Aussies because what I found is that they are super creative. They love to think. They love to think for themselves. They want to be told. They want to be told to
That's
hold,
right.
right? And I think this
Which
is
causes problems sometimes.
yeah, oh, all the time. This is the thing. But it makes us all so much better trainers because
Hmm.
it's not like a dog who, like a German Shepherd or Border Collie say, you say, do this, and they're like, okay, because you said so.
Hmm.
They're going to say, why? Hang on, I can think of a better way.
Yeah. I think they're part cat almost, a little bit female cat in there.
Yes. And I think that that's actually so cool because it
Mhm.
makes us have to be creative. And I know when the Aussies first came into the country, a load of people were lucky enough to have them here. And they tried to do obedience with them. And there was sort of only two people who were successful. And otherwise, it was a real shit show.
Mhm.
Because if you're trying to tell the Aussies to do something, they're just going to at one point put their little fingers up and say no.
Yeah. And
So
they require you to have a sense of humor and you have to have that ability to just laugh and be like, whatever. And I think IGP needs that because those guys are so serious about everything. Like everything is so serious. We need a little lightheartedness, right?
Yeah, but well, AGP is another thing because Gracie's a serious little dog, and she kind of fits into the Germanic model. She's a funny dog. She takes her work very, very seriously.
Good.
So, but Shanti taught me to be creative
Right.
and fun with my training, and she Shanti taught me how to train her to get up to a really high standard in UK obedience, as you sort of said. It's crazy. It's
Mhm.
unfortunately, it's not like the AKC, champions are very, very
No.
far between. In fact, in the early days in the UK, it was German Shepherds and Dobermans.
Mhm.
It wasn't it was more of a military sport.
Mhm.
Um, and now it's all border collies. Um, and yeah, this year at Crufts, Gracie was sick, so she's not there. And it's all collies. There's no other breeds at all. And that's normal. And
Mhm.
I kind of like that we are the ones who are able to say, hang on a minute, guys, if you think differently, you can do this. You can
Mhm.
do this with another breed and with an Aussie.
Mhm.
And yeah, they're very, very different. So yeah, that's kind of my story. That's my
Nice.
how-to story. And Gracie came along as Shanti's baby, and she's a weird, weird Aussie because she was sharp, feisty. I mean, okay, people would probably say aggressive at a very young age. I took her into a puppy club and she was having a go at shepherds. She was just super confident.
Mhm.
And I remember somebody saying, oh, good job you've got her. Otherwise, she'd be in rehome. And I was kind of like, well, yeah, and a good job I do because it's that feistiness. And I know that, and this is why I think that she's a little bit of a throwback because um, I know that a lot of the working dogs need that feistiness because they can't be dogs who are trodden on by cattle or say, okay, don't you worry. They can,
Right.
off you go,
Right.
cattle.
Right.
They stand up for themselves. They need to have
Mhm.
that spunk about them. Otherwise, they're going to be a useless dog. Otherwise, they're just a couch potato. And Gracie
Yeah.
is awesome like that.
Well, and I bring this up a lot because it needs to be said almost every day that we do podcasts is that, they were an American bred breed. And a lot of people that I know that I hate to say 'em, sorry guys, but old timers, the ones that originated in the breed, back in the day, a lot of those people got their first Aussies from a rodeo or a ranch or the back of a pickup somewhere. And those dogs that were in like the rodeos and stuff like that, they'd haul their dogs along to guard their saddles and their trucks. And they were valued for their what we call aggression, but that protectiveness, the thing that our world has gone a little bit bananas with the dogs. They're not allowed to be dogs anymore. They have to be more perfect than humans in their behavior, as far as like biting and growling and being natural. But that was what they were valued for, their protectiveness, and back when I was growing up, if you got bit by a dog, it was usually your fault, not the dog's fault. And so it's totally shifted into what that is. So when people say, "Oh, you'd rehome that dog," it's like that's sad because of how much we have changed our thinking about dogs. And this breed, it's hard for this breed because it's not an old breed, it's a young breed. And they haven't had a lot of time to breed out that protectiveness, that reserved with strangers thing, the part that is the breed standard here in the US. And so these dogs can suffer at the hands of people who don't understand them and understand dog behavior in general. So I'm glad you got her and that you understood that and were able to take that, what
Yes.
some perceive as a weakness, and turn it into a strength.
Oh, absolutely. And it makes her an incredible dog.
Mhm.
If she was a couch potato who didn't care, because the thing is why is a dog like that? Because they care. Like she's
Mhm.
looking at her surroundings. She says, who's that person? What's this one doing? Who's this dog? Is that a face you made at me? Everything is about. She's a very, very sensitive, highly
Mhm.
tuned, intelligent dog who has a strong guarding instinct. And that is an amazing thing. And that is what I believe Aussies should be. But as you say, in this modern world where, we're all meant to be calm and the dogs are meant to be calm, it slightly drives me nuts because it's like, okay, you want a calm dog. Well, it's not an Aussie. It's just
No,
not.
no, it is not. No, guys, I don't think anyone's ever said that Aussies and calm in the same sentence before, other
No,
than they are
that's what,
not it.
and that's what sells pets. And that's what people
Correct.
want in their houses, in the cities. They want a dog who's going to sit on the sofa and be calm.
Hmm.
And they want something that's going to look pretty.
Yeah, and that's what has, and that the whole sofa, I want a sofa dog thing has, how do I say this? I don't even care. I'm gonna say it. It has ruined a lot of breeds, not just Aussies, golden retrievers, Labrador retrievers, these working dogs that they were meant for a purpose. They weren't just meant to lay on a couch somewhere. And I get that we all want a dog that, there's people who have apartments and you should be able to have a dog. Well, just it still has ruined a lot of breeds to become pets. Or maybe not ruined them, but taken them definitely away from their original value. And now some of these breeds, it's really hard to find these dogs that were so good originally, and now they're not. They're not the same. They're not the same.
Absolutely. And now the conversation could take us to, and then it's difficult to find owners, probably outside of ranches and farms, who are able to deal with these
Hmm.
very sensitive, quite feisty, highly attuned, spicy little dogs.
Hmm.
And that's probably why breeders want to have to breed the yeah, the sofa dogs, let's call them.
Yeah, and it's the same with like say Malinois have taken a lot of they've gotten a lot of interest in people. Everybody wants a Malinois. And I'm like, no, you freaking do not want a Malinois. Like that's having an alligator in your house. And I have some Aussies that have that same drive. They may not have exactly the same personality, but and I think a Malinois is like a cross between a working border collie and an alligator or something like that. Like, that intensity, that intelligence, but then that mouth of just and never being able to stop, never being able to sit down. And Aussies, the working Aussies, you have that. I mean, I have dogs that are just high energy dogs. They're not the working line ones. And so you do have to be careful. You can't just take them and live in an apartment. They'll drive you bananas and they'll rip the walls off and they'll,
Yes.
so if you're looking for a working dog, you need to be prepared for a lifelong of developing that dog, teaching it to be calm, teaching it to use its mind. It's not its reactive side, but its thinking side and all that. And so it's a lot. So I agree with you 100%.
And
I'm glad you brought that
well,
up.
and I'm going to say, and it would be if you lived in the apartment, and it would be if you didn't have a herd to herd, it would be
Hmm.
finding a really challenging
Hmm.
sport or
Right.
something for them to do. Because also, I think with some of the sports, you know, some of them are just not very challenging considering how bright the Aussies are.
No,
But
and I think
no.
some of the sports are detrimental to their mindset,
Mhm.
because I'm always talking about mindset with the dogs, and I think we'll talk about that later with your other business venture. But you know, um, adrenaline is the enemy. So some of those sports, like chasing the stick around or the bag around the thing, I can't remember what they call that, where they just run around with chasing a bag like greyhounds used to do. To me, that's a terrible idea. I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings, people, but it's a terrible idea because all you're doing is adrenaline, adrenaline, adrenaline. Fly ball. I have friends who used to do fly ball demonstrations at like the San Antonio Spurs games and stuff. Well, they also knew how to handle those dogs and they knew how to manage their mindset and they knew how they also worked on a ranch. So yeah, it can be done. But for the average, that's a terrible sport. It's all adrenaline, 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 adrenaline. So, like you say, I think you need to challenge them mentally, but also you have to be able to control that adrenaline in those dogs, right?
Yes. Yes. And what I love to do is I work because Gracie's very a naturally sort of high arousal dog. There's a lot of Shanti wasn't. Shanti was a very much like a show dog. And she was very much like, well, maybe I will, maybe I won't, you know. So you're not an easy dog to work, and you certainly wouldn't want her on a ranch or a farm because sometimes the job would be done, sometimes it wouldn't, and
Right.
just yeah, bless her. Look, gorgeous dog, but not
Mhm.
working dog.
Right.
Whereas Gracie's got that attitude of very high arousal, lots of gas in the tank, and lots of drive. So
Hmm.
there's lots of fire as well. And that's actually what I want. And that's what I want to harness. Because if I've got a dog who's too laid back, they're not going to do hard things. Because
Hmm.
I want a dog who's able to withstand and be incredibly courageous and resilient. So keep going, even
Hmm.
though, say an IGP, I'm the other end of a football stadium field, and the dog is working independently on a helper. So actually, we're not talking about a very different thing to
Right.
right?
Right.
It's like
Yeah,
the
it's
dog
distance work.
they want to do on their own,
Hmm.
independently. You're a million miles away. You give them the out command, and whether or not they do it, that's the interesting
Yeah, right.
thing.
Well, and I want to go back to like one
Yeah.
thing before we move forward about like the mental thing and the stimulation. Like, and this is another thing I like to talk about, the myth of exercising your dog. Like, for example, I'll tell you this. I used to throw balls for my dogs, like with the chuck it and whatever, and they would just lose their bananas. And they just, then there would be a scuffle or there would be this. And so I was like, we're done with that because their mental state was not good. So I can ride out, I have a four-wheeler and we run around. And I noticed that when I run around the four-wheeler, they get exercise, but they're just as amped up when we get back as when we left. But if I walk with them, they come back calmer. So it's not always exercise, it's the type of exercise and the type of thing that you're teaching them to do, the self-control, the thinking things, the things that engage their brain, because that will wear them out. Like
Yes.
tracking. I know you do tracking with IGP. Let's just talk about what IGP is. It's
Yeah.
explain the three things
Yeah.
and the stuff that
Okay,
you do.
so the origins of Schutzhund, as I'm sure you know, Jackie, it's a German Shepherd breed sport. It's to
Mhm.
breed. It was developed as a test for breeding on the very best genetically sound German Shepherds, mainly for the police and military. And the idea is that there are three elements. The first element is tracking, so you're tracking down a criminal. And then the second stage is obedience. So it's control around a criminal, and their obedience involves a great deal of athleticism. So there's a scale wall and a meter hurdle and a 2 kilo dumbbell, which is a lot for an 18.
Yes, it's big.
It's big. And all of the requirements in their obedience is power, speed, and joy and drive. So they're wanting to see a dog who very naturally is wanting to do. None of this kind of, the dog looking a little bit sad with their tail between their legs. So you sometimes see obedience dogs. And the third
Yes.
element is protection. And in protection, they've got to exercise. I think it's like it's almost like martial arts, because it's rather than, I've had people in the show Aussie community here get at me because they're like, oh, your Aussie shouldn't be trained to be an attack dog. It's literally, it would be like calling somebody who does judo or karate um, a street fighter. It's
Yeah.
that opposite. It's like,
Yes.
it's really beautiful, very, very controlled. It's like a dance, very, very
Hmm.
structured. The helper does this in a specific way. The dog does this in a specific way. So it's a beautiful dance between the helper, who is basically the criminal, who the dog has to find on the field by running around the hides, and then holds them in the hide with a hold and bark. So it has to show a degree of aggression in the hide. And the word aggression in IGP is allowed. It's
Yes.
because it's the dog showing appropriate uncontrolled aggression.
But is it aggression or is it more play? Like it's a play drive and a prey drive combined, right?
So there are two drives. Yeah, you can either use a prey or aggression.
Hmm.
Um, I'm going to say Gracie doesn't have prey drive. She only
Okay.
works aggression.
Okay.
So she has a lot of aggression, very natural, very protective.
Yeah.
And the way we bring it out is the helper will come to attack me.
Uh-huh.
She'll go nuts.
Yeah. Well, and the helper, if you watch these videos and if you are not if you have an untrained eye or don't know, I follow a lot of these trainers that do IGP and different Mondio ring and all those different sports in that genre of working because I feel like, I mentioned this to you before. I don't want to just get stuck in my world because then I won't grow. I have no interest in doing that as a sport myself. It's not, but I love learning from these guys because there are things you can bring back to, and also when I have students that come to me and say, I have a bite work dog, and I'm like, no, because I know that I would ruin them for certain things and that, you know, anyway, I won't go into all that. But y'all, it's really fascinating that the helpers, they're very highly skilled. You don't just grab some guy and say, here, put a bite suit on. They have to be very careful and how they work the sleeve, correct? Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because it's a big deal.
Yeah, it's a huge deal. And I feel that I'm not the best qualified person to talk about helper work because I am I'm fairly new to the sport. And although my dog is incredibly well qualified, I'd say that was her trajectory has been ridiculously quick.
Mhm.
And that's just because I'm going to now just say it's just my training skills. I'm quite a good trainer, and I've got a very good relationship with my dog.
Yeah.
So do I know everything about helper work? No. But yeah, helpers have to be incredibly careful and absolute minutia timing. Because if you think in the long attack, which is one of the exercises, so the dog has to run down the football stadium length, so it's gathering a huge amount of speed, especially for a fast dog, and the helper has to catch them with the sleeve. So the dog attacks
Mhm.
the helper, and the helper has to shift their arm because if they don't move their arm, the dog's going to break their neck. So
Correct.
it has to move at the right angle. And
Hmm.
I'm guessing again, this is quite like a fast dog working on cattle. If accidents can happen.
Correct.
It's something that's being done at speed, and the dog is having to turn, and the helper has to turn the dog in order to harness that speed and not hurt them. So yeah,
Yes.
it's like I say, it's like a martial art. It's a very
Hmm.
beautiful dance.
Well, and
Um,
then keep themselves safe, but the helpers go through a lot of training, at least the different
Hugely.
podcasts and people I've listened to. I again don't know much about it other than the fact that they can hurt the dog if they don't do it right. They can get themselves hurt. And some of those dogs bite through the suit. Like
Oh
they'll
yeah.
get bloodied or bruised or whatever
Oh,
through the suit. So,
yeah. Yeah. It's a they say it's a young man's sport, and
yeah.
being attacked by 30 odd huge dogs in a day
Oh,
is
yeah, exhausting.
it's
But it's good that we have them. So,
it's
talk about some of the things like with IGP, the obedience is
mm.
next level. The dogs have to work at a high speed, a high energy level. What kind of things do you do to train that?
So I'm going to say I was lucky because I had my foundation is competitive obedience.
Hmm.
So I trained, obviously, I bred Gracie and I started training her in the clicker from about 5 weeks.
Hmm.
And I started out with shaping games. And, so I'd just be able to retrieve, shape a hold. And I wanted her, the reason why I like that kind of training is I want her to be able to think for herself, to not get things wrong. I don't want her to ever feel stuck. I don't want her to feel like she's not able to do things. I just want her to offer behaviors and keep wanting and keep trying. So she was a ridiculous puppy. At 6 months old, she won her novice classes. She qualified for championship, very, very young. And she got all three of her championship wins in 3 months. So she is an incredibly and extraordinary obedience dog. And when I say obedience, the sport of UK obedience, I'm just going to go here for a bit, is about accuracy. And it's 100% accuracy. And it is an absolute looking at things to a ridiculous minutia. I'd encourage folks to have a little look at, say, our Crufts round on YouTube, which is
Hmm.
it's 15 minutes and 10 minutes is heel work. And it's complicated patterns, and the dog has to be precisely in this exact position for the
Oh,
entire
yeah.
time and it's a huge ask. So the advantage was I had trained her up to this standard in obedience. So she had a very, very thorough knowledge of what was required. So then when I amped it up for IGP, so by amping it up, I'm using obviously toys, I'm using bite toys, I'm bringing up her level arousal. I'm also using her bark because I've found that my Aussies have got a lot of bark in them.
Hmm.
They really, really enjoy barking, and
Hmm.
I the bark. So something I get a little frustrated about is a lot of folks avoid the bark and they're like, "Oh, I don't like my Aussies making noise." I I have found that it is who they are, and if it is who they are, I'm going to use it because they feel good when they're barking. They feel like
Hmm.
they're in control. They feel unless it's a sort of frustration bark, and that can
Right.
be a thing or a whine.
Yes.
But often it can be a demand bark, and I
Yes.
quite like it. It can be a bossy bark, like
Oh,
you do this,
yes.
yeah. You know that one.
The little one that was had her face up here is my newest
Yes.
one. She's about a year and a half, and I was talking to her breeder about her. She's if I leave her out like in the front yard, because I can't leave her out unsupervised yet near the animals because she's got too much drive still and not enough control. So I leave her in the yard and she sees me or hears me getting ready to go outside or put the boots on or put that coat on. She goes bananas. And it's this demanding, you shall let me out now bark. It's not
Yeah.
a separation anxiety. It's not a, and speaking of that, and I'm glad you brought that bark thing out because uh people don't understand that Aussies are they do have a bark. And a lot of working people too, especially because it comes from the border collie world, because most of us learned from them because that's the, natural progression history of herding and all that. Um, that bark is bad. And well, frustrated bark is bad. And I don't want a dog that barks constantly because that's annoying. But using a bark on a cow, and if a cow moves off the bark, is way safer than going in for a bite. I mean, if they need a bite, fine. But if they don't, fine. And the bark is oftentimes used to tell you where they are. Because if you're working 100, even 100 sheep, the dog disappears sometimes if you're not elevated. And so, my dogs don't typically bark on sheep, but they will bark on cows occasionally. Not a lot, but like it's not the bad thing. And I think the suppression of that bark causes these other things, like this teaching them self-control, not like letting them bark all the time. That's not what we're talking about, people, so I don't want to hear about it. But like if you suppress it and don't understand it, you're causing frustration in these dogs. And there's so many behavior problems
Absolutely.
out of frustration in Aussies.
Especially in obedience,
Mm-hmm.
especially in agility. And you see that all the time. Like these Aussies who are basically running circles and they look like their eyes are going to pop out of their heads and they're wanting to bark and they're being told, no, keep calm. I'm trying the calming behaviors. It's like, can you not just give your dog an outlet for the thing it
Mm-hmm.
wants to do? It just wants to do this thing. So with my Aussies, I teach them a bark on command and a
Yeah.
stop bark on command.
Yes.
And it's easy.
Uh-huh.
Does does your red guy want to go out?
No, he
Sorry.
just hears something. Copper, he just hears something. We're having this work done on our place, so there's bulldozers and tractors, and so they're all barking, and
Okay. Yeah.
he's fine.
Um,
He's fine.
so yeah, just checking on the kids.
So thank you.
So I use the barking because for me it's a signal. It's a signal that she is ready and she's up for it and that she's telling me, okay, here we go. So before we do obedience, which has to be done in silence, I give her the ability to literally push me around. So I'll be walking backwards, and this is something that you get from IGP is how to play with your dog, so that your dog feels confident and strong. As your dog sort of barks into your face, you walk backwards and you act scared, and you're like, "Oh, little Aussie, oh gosh, you're scaring me," and they
Hmm.
love that feeling. They're like, "Oh, it's scaring mum," and then you say, "Okay, now we do close," and like, "Okay, fine, on we go." But then they're coming to it from a feeling of
Yeah,
power.
exactly. And I do that with some dogs that if I have a herding dog in that I need to build drive, I'm like, okay, as soon as they get connected to the sheep again, we're going to stop our session, but you have to go pretend like you can't catch them. Like, oh my gosh, you're such a, intense dog and I can't catch you. And I'm telling you, it doesn't always, but it will work occasionally where you're trying to build drive on a dog where
Yeah.
and also we talk all the time to them and they want to be able to talk back to us. So I think you got to let them do that.
I love that. I love that. Yes, so I have her for obedience being pushy in the in between and pushy to start, but the obedience is very, very formulaic,
Mhm.
incredibly accurate,
Mhm.
and it's a sport that really has to be done. I'd say medium drive. You can't be high drive in the UK
Mhm.
because that creates inaccuracies, and you won't win with
Mhm.
inaccuracies. So the bottom has to be precisely. I
Does
don't
she
know.
have that nice sliding stop whenever you send her out? Does she
Yeah.
do a sliding stop?
Yeah.
How do you teach that?
I'll send you a picture, a video of the send away. Um, yeah. How do I teach it? Well, I just teach a really accurate down. So I teach it obviously so at the moment I'm teaching my puppy. I teach it, just down. You start off with a lure, then you move on. You very quick. I fade the lure very, very quickly.
Yes.
So keep keep with the down, and then I teach it with increased arousal. So it's actually interesting that you were saying about the ball stuff on a walk because I agree. Dogs who are recklessly charging around after balls just sends my head into into the wrong space. But something that I'm doing at the moment, I've got a Malinois puppy and I'm teaching him impulse control. And the way I'm doing it is with ball play, with Gracie. So I'm amping Gracie up and she's shouting and spinning, and we've got a ball, and I'm just having him sit. And he's 5 months. So this is a really nice exercise
Mm-hmm.
to teach that differential. So I'll have Gracie spinning, da 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 da, and then Gracie down, and then I'll throw the ball for him, and then she has to be down, and then throw a ball for her. So everybody has to be one for the ball to be thrown. There has to be a control, and they have to be down, and then they get it. So
Yeah.
I don't do just crazy balls, but it's a really nice way of teaching them in arousal.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll teach them a stop throw in arousal with a ball like that. And, they only get it if it's quick.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it's a sucker. And then he
Ah,
will bite you.
okay. Because I don't know if some of you are not maybe not following because I just sort of was just the sliding stop is on the send out, which how far so you send your dog out, the dog
Yeah.
has to down when you say down. How does that talk about that exercise?
That's a send away on IGP. And to be honest, I find it a very simple exercise to train because IGP isn't a sport where things are creative or different. It's always the same test.
Mm-hmm.
And Aussies are super bright. They know the test. Whereas in
Mm-hmm.
obedience, it's always a different test, which makes it very difficult and challenging and actually more fun to train. But IGP is always go to the end of the football stadium and down when I say so. So when you're training it, you just train, go to the end of the football stadium, especially with, I'm going to call my Aussies, maybe it doesn't count for all, mine are not natural running dogs. Like they won't just run for the sheer hell of it. They'll
Right.
have to have a reason for running.
Mm-hmm.
So I will 9 out of 10 times reward them for the run.
Mm-hmm.
And then 1 in 10, they're allowed to down. And they're so excited that they're allowed to do that exercise because I've built a huge amount of value.
Right.
And the way I build value is with the toys, also treats. I do lots of food rewards. Mine have always been gannets. I don't know about yours, but they will do anything for food, which makes them easy to train.
Yes.
And I build them up as well for different kinds of toy play. So I'm basically building their value for the things that I want to give them as reinforcement. And I personally don't work with punishment. The most punishment I'll do is you don't get it if it's too slow, and then it's like, ha ha, sucker. Now we get to go again,
It
and
needs to
that's
be a game. In order to keep their arousal high, their drive high, it needs to be a game because if they get corrected, this is the difference between new school obedience and old school. Like we grew up, we've been lucky, I think, to live in over a couple, decades of whatever, where it was the jerk and pull and the only correction. We did not, when I first started, when I was a kid, looking and reading books and doing all that, they barely praised their dogs. Like the Good Dog book that Barbara Woodhouse wrote was like, that's the first time anyone actually said, praise your dog, right? Like they were pretty brutal with those dogs. And even we talked about this early Schutzhund when I started there were a lot of really unbalanced dogs, very mentally unstable dogs because of the way they trained, the jerk and pull, the low reward. And that sport, I'm very proud of that sport. I'm very, like, it's awesome to watch it has grown into this much better. There's terrible trainers and everything, of course, but the majority of people are very positive. They're very play and prey drive, and they're breeding for better minds in these dogs. And they understand that a stable-minded dog is a much better uh, base to start from, right? And so I'm really proud of how far it's come. And you guys over in Europe have a lot more restrictions than we do on things like pinch collars and e-collars and all those kind of things. They're outlawed in several countries out there. And so you have to, which is good. I mean, I think there's a place for some tools like that, but for this kind of thing, I don't know that it's super, helpful all the time. And if people are using e-collars here in the US and to motivate the dogs, they're not
Mm.
shocking them to correct them. They're using a little stim to like, ooh, like excite the dog to arouse them a little bit. It's just a vibration. It's not like a shock,
Yeah.
like a,
I don't know how excited I'd be by being vibrated with electricity,
I don't
but
I don't know about much about it,
that's a
but I'm listening to
subject.
them talking about, and it's not that. It's like on the lowest levels, an e-collar just feels like a vibration. It's not an electric shock. I mean, like I've put them on my arms before, and I'm like, oh, that's just a vibration. And so they like, I don't know how it's done because I'm not an expert in that, but I hear that they're doing that. So everybody's trying to, as a sport globally, trying to move into this more positive, world where we're motivating our dogs to do things because they the sheer joy of it. And you can't do the Crufts obedience, you can't do the IGP obedience if you don't have a dog that is kind of obsessed with it and in loving it. If they hate it, it's not going to work. You
Yeah,
can't drag them around in that sport.
yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
And but on the other hand, I'm not going to say, there are dogs who are trained with force.
Of
There are
course.
dogs who do it because they are conditioned to do it. And training with force does work. It's still
Hmm.
dog training. It's just the kind of training that I'd choose to do.
Right. Right. And
Um,
there's a place for rules and boundaries and all that, and having expectations for dogs. But I'm with you. I'd rather have fun with it. And I'm not that ego driven. So,
and I want to see my dog's tail wag.
correct. I want them, like, they're my friend. They're not like
Right.
my servant or whatever you want to call it. They're my friend. I want them to enjoy this as much as I do. And if I have a dog that's for what I do, if they don't like it, they're not going to do it. So you can't even train it because the stock thing, it's like you're either going to do it or you're not. And so there's that in it, but I don't want to steal their joy from it. I don't want to make it so that they don't want to do it and that quashes their drive.
And I think that Aussies are particularly great trainers because I don't think that they
Hmm.
take very well to punishment. I think
Hmm.
that they hold grudges and they don't they will not work in the same way. And they're fairly sensitive, telepathic dogs. And if they think
Hmm.
that we are upset with them in any way, they're not going to work in that free way and they're not going to feel good about the job. So they're
Right.
just not do as good a job.
They have a different intelligence. Like, I have a lot of border collies that I train, and border collies are born half trained for herding stuff. I mean, they're the working lines. Like now they have lines that don't work, of course, sadly. But the working lines are born half trained. It's easy. They do the thing. And they have an intelligence that is super high. Like you'll see them in obedience and doing these things, but it's different. Aussies have that intelligence that sometimes it's more of a thinking, a more of a decision making, more of a cat-like
Yes.
type
Yeah,
intelligence.
exactly that. Want to make decisions.
They want to please us like crazy, but they want to be part of the decisions. Like my dogs, they're type A personality dogs. They're like, I know, just get out of my way. I know what we're gonna do. Get out of the way. I'll do this. That's how they are when I open a gate or something. I'm like, no, that's not what we're gonna do. You need to listen. We're changing it up today. Like they just like, I know it. I gotta do it. That's how they are about everything. Um,
Great dogs.
yeah, they are great dogs. Great, 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 great
Yeah.
dogs.
So one thing that here in the UK people have got upset about me doing IGP with Gracie is because they're
Uh-huh.
saying, "Oh, this isn't really what the dogs are about."
Uh-huh.
For me, IGP is literally the perfect sport for an Aussie. And the kind of Aussies which I have the feeling who are on your website and who are being promoted because by, big proper working Aussies, because they're courageous, they're independent thinkers, they're athletic, and they're dogs who don't mind biting if something is
Mhm.
up their back. They're going to use their teeth, and they do have a grip, and they're going to be calm in their grip. They're not panicking, because that's something that is looked for in this sport. And I would love to see more Aussies doing IGP, and it is a shame. They've got the downside of Aussies is genetically they have tiny mouths, and they just do, and they're tiny dogs. And that's hard because if you've got
Oh
a
yeah.
six helper, and it means the Aussie is going to have to jump a lot higher, and whereby a shepherd or a Mallee, if they get a slightly rubbish bite, they just redirect because
Mhm.
their hind legs are already on the ground. Well, the Aussies can't do that because they're dangling 6 foot in the air because they're so tiny. That's
Yes,
the
and the sleeve
thing.
is pretty wide.
It's huge.
Yeah.
It's
That's a
huge.
good point. I hadn't thought about that. A lot of people are breeding these dogs smaller and smaller. The
Yes,
Aussies,
it's
smaller
a
and smaller. I'm
problem.
like, what are you doing? Like, I like the big Aussies. I like big Aussies, the tall
Yeah.
ones, at the top of the 23 inches or whatever.
Yeah.
But I didn't think about the mouth thing because I'm glad you brought up that whole off-breed thing. And I was going to ask you, do you get treated differently because they call it off-breed, a breed that's not a German Shepherd, a Malinois, or a Dutch Shepherd or whatever. Like they're off breeds, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we definitely get treated differently. And to be honest, people, it frustrates, annoys me. They're like, oh, little Gracie, because she's fluffy.
Uh-huh.
But I kind of think, no, give this dog a little bit of respect.
Yeah.
She's also a working dog. And it annoys, the biggest downfall of the breed is their looks. They just look
Yes.
so damn cute and fluffy.
Mm-hmm.
And then people don't believe who they are inside.
Mm-hmm.
And who they are inside is really quite feisty.
Well, and that is, I have always said the downfall or the the biggest thing that hurts Aussies is they're so damn cute as puppies. And they're like these fluffy balls of blue merle and
Yeah.
whatever. Then you get this little monster on the, like they're not what they look like. Their soul is mighty and not like what they look like. And Copper,
Right?
same with Copper. He looks like a confirmation dog. He has no confirmation bloodlines in him at all, but he's all fluffy and big white collar. And I'm like, dude. And so, people will look at him, and go, okay, whatever. Don't underestimate that. Their appearance does harm them, I think,
And that's what frustrates me about, the IGP. Well, in general, the people have been so welcoming to me. They're
Mhm.
lovely to me. Do they think I'm serious competition? No.
No, they're like, oh, it's nice to see you. Pat you
That's
on the
right.
head,
Oh,
right?
it's so nice that you're trying it with your little,
Uh-huh.
is that a collie? That's what they say. So it frustrates me because I'm like, no, actually, she's a serious assault. In fact, a lot more serious. So at the last trial we were at, I traveled to Germany to trial, which is the home of Schutzhunds, because I wanted to see what the German judges and people would make of her. And she got the highest in trial score. So she beat the
Awesome.
Shepherds and the Malleys. Right. How awesome is that? And there are a lot of Malleys with who aren't working with power and who do have nerve, but people think, oh, it's a Mallee, so it must be powerful. And yet the Aussie, full of heart. And
Mhm.
that's the thing that I've really found is they've got this huge heart and they're going to give everything their all. And that's such an amazing quality because they're like, right, they absolutely believe that they're going to take down this 6'6" guy who is
Yeah.
coming at them with a stick. And they're like, yep, no problem.
And they
Of course,
would to the death. If it was
absolutely.
legit. And those German judges
Yes,
and don't have a reputation for being soft on anyone. So that's awesome that you
absolutely.
did so
They-
well.
Absolutely. And they can see it. And he said, she's confident, she's courageous, she's got this. And it's that feeling which, if people could just take the Aussies a little bit more seriously, and if breeders and owners could really lean into all of their huge capabilities and their
Copper.
owners do more with them. Try different things.
Sorry. You're good. I was trying to get him to be quiet. I agree with you 100%. I don't want to interrupt you what you're talking about. Doing this, you're 100% right. And understanding them too. And so many people who get these dogs have no understanding of number one, dog behavior. And number two, this particular breed, they're just not as simple as the average dog that just lays on the couch. They're complicated. They demand of you. They want to be in your life. They want to be in charge of your life, pretty much, if you let them.
Yes.
So,
And and they're a lot harder to train. So I've got this Malinois who is just so easy to train. He's a bit like one of those collies.
hmm
They're pretty much born doing prancy heel work. The stuff he's doing at the moment is crazy, crazy good. And that's why people get them because they see all this stuff on Instagram about how good they are to work. And then the other 23 and a half hours in the day that are just horrible.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
With the Aussies, you've got to be a bit smarter. You've got to be a bit of a better trainer. You've got to be able to use your own emotions, everything that you have to bring to the table to bring the best out of your Aussie.
Mhm. And to convince them of the
Yes.
job and be like, this is what we do. They want to please us so badly. And this is why if people are like, oh, I'm not exactly, why are they so hard to train when they want to please you so badly? Well, they do, but they also have their own mind. And if you're kind of a control freak kind of person, you have to have everything on the line. Those are the people that struggle with these dogs. And I'm like, look, if you can't let go a little bit and let them make some decisions, go get a border collie. If you want to just tell someone, robot dog, go get a border collie. That's what they were bred. They're happy to do that. It doesn't hurt their feelings. These are not those dogs. They can do anything, and the stories about them are epic. But if you take one of these dogs and you teach them to think and to do the job and make decisions, they're going to make the wrong decisions sometimes. That's part of learning, just like we make the wrong decisions. Sometimes we expect way too much of our dogs at the beginning. And like I can send them on a site and they can have shape on two sides of a fence, like Copper's done many times, and he can go out of sight without me giving commands because I can't see him, figuring out how to get them around obstacles and things on their own. That is their brilliance. That is what they do so well, if you let them do that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. No, they are absolutely phenomenal.
They
And
are.
I hope that more people just want to do more different stuff.
Yeah,
Dogs.
I love it. So if somebody were to they were interested in IGP or just high level obedience. And say, let me just say, guys, I don't want to step on anyone's toes here, but um, our obedience at like the AKC level is not even close to what it is like at Crufts or IGP or any of those things. So like if you're at that and you love that competition, you want to go higher,
Mm.
then that's the next level to go to IGP or Mondio. There's a whole bunch of bite work sports that have an obedience element to it. Um,
Yeah. And
so
it's so challenging. Reason why I love training obedience so much is because I think the trouble is in the word obedience makes it sound like I say this and you do that. But actually, obedience is such a varied and interesting set of behaviors that we're teaching our dogs. So if you're interested in teaching complex behaviors, and you're wondering, how much can my Aussie learn? What does my Aussie want to, yeah, what can they pick up? What nuances can they learn from me saying absolutely nothing? Because in both these sports, you're not allowed to talk to your dog. And your dog just has to know. You gave it one cue 10 minutes ago, and it knows that it has to carry on doing that thing. And it's a hugely challenging and rich thing to work because the level of connection with your dog just has to be massive. So I think
yeah,
it's just increasing the connection with your dog.
yeah. Well, I agree with you. And it's like a dance almost that you're teaching them the dance moves. And, in our world here in obedience, except for rally, which is just, there's nothing wrong with rally. It's just super fun. And I like it because it's different all the time. But there's not a high level. It's not a highly competitive sport as far as like the obedience you guys do. And the fact that Crufts has different patterns, I like that. I think that that makes it a higher level, right? Like that pushes the envelope to that higher level thing. So, I would encourage you guys that are listening and watching this, check out Kat's videos, and we'll put in the show notes a way for you to find her. Check out some IGP stuff and look at what we're talking about. Because if you've only heard IGP and you're like, okay, it's hard to get the context, you need to see it. You need to see these dogs working. You need to see them doing this obedience work, the bite work, the tracking. I mean, the tracking thing is so we didn't even talk about that. I used to do tracking with my dogs, like AKC style tracking, which is I think actually a little bit more challenging in a way than the IGP stuff, but it's different because it's like footstep tracking with IGP. They have to track, their nose has to be in a very controlled pattern. They have to put their nose like in every footstep to qualify, correct? Is it still that way?
Absolutely. Yeah. Somebody once described it as upside down heel work because
Mm-hmm.
it's really more precision than nose work. 'Cause when a dog uses its
Mm-hmm.
nose, they normally raise their nose in order to get the scent off the wind, and they normally move at speed. But those are things which aren't allowed in IGP. The dog
Yes.
must go very slowly. It's very
Mm-hmm.
German, very formulaic, go
Mm-hmm.
from foot to footstep very, very precisely. And you find the article, and the dog must very precisely indicate. And so yeah,
Not
it's
realistic.
natural of,
Yeah.
of
It's
these.
not natural because once those dogs have learned how to track, they know where that article is right when you start because the
Yeah,
tracks aren't that big in that sport, I don't think. And then
I love that.
They're not that long and they're not that big. And so the dog has to actually learn. I like that idea of the upside down heeling. That's a really cool way to look at it. But
Yeah.
dogs with noses, and this is just another thing. If you guys are interested in doing sports with dogs that are super good for dogs, any of that nose work stuff is awesome. The tracking is super challenging and it's fun because you could just go hang out with a bunch of friends, laying tracks, aging tracks, hiking through the forest and the meadows and the fields, and just it's so laid back, but it's super challenging. Um, I did and I can't remember, I'm terrible with remembering things on the spot, but I did a tracking course with the guy from Denmark, and he's like one of the, you probably know who he is, top tracking trainers. And I had within a few days my little dog tracking nails in the ground. Like we pounded a nail in the ground and she was tracking those, and out their noses are so amazing that we just don't even. And if I had more time, that would be the second thing I did because it's a natural. I like the natural sports, the things that use the dog's instincts and the things that dogs can do that I can't do. So I like that because it's more of a partnership then, to me, because they have their thing they can do that I can't do. And then I have the thing that they can't do, and we work together to get the job done.
I love that.
Mhm.
Such a nice way of seeing it.
Thank
I
you.
think that's how I see the bite work. It's like,
Mhm.
yeah, you've got the teeth. You track them down, you get them, hold them in, and I'll come and get. It's not unlike herding, and your only job is to stop them from doing it when not allowed.
Yes. Well, and I
No one
like,
else.
yes, and I think that the thing I like about the IGP thing, a lot of things I like about it, but the distance work, they're working at a, football field. I don't know what y'all, because your football is soccer, ours is football, and anyway, it's like 100 yards for us is a football field. I'm not sure how many yards is in your soccer field, but that's a long ways.
Big way,
Mhm.
yes,
It's a
yeah.
long ways to have off leash control, and the dogs are off leash and they have to listen to you in a highly aroused situation where they're biting somebody
Right.
and they're excited and there's adrenaline pumping. They have to be able to listen to you, and that's like the epitome of obedience, of partnership and teamwork, because when they can hear you through the adrenaline, which is hard because
Yeah.
it's hard for them to tune out the adrenaline and tune you in.
Yes,
Super
exactly that.
challenging.
It's
Mhm.
it, and it's so amazing to send your dog when you send them down the field, and you can literally feel them vibrating before they go. They're sitting
Mhm.
by, and they're like, please let me go. And then the baddie runs out and starts to attack the dog. So he's
Mhm.
running out, and the dog's like, let me go, let me get him. And then they get him, and you're still down the other end of the field.
Yeah.
And there's a point where you've got to say out, so the dog stops biting. And then at that point, the dog guards the person, so they're not
Uh-huh.
allowed to move because the guard's got to be strong. And then the guy reattacks the dog, and the dog, on its own accord, so not on your instruction, has to rebite when the guy attacks. So it's the dog seeing, oh,
Mhm.
he's now attacking me, so now I'm gonna go.
Yeah.
And that's so cool. I love that.
I love it too, and I love watching it. I think it's a coolest. It's a really good sport. Now, guys, I'm gonna put in my little warning here for some. I don't think any of y'all are gonna do this, but don't go out and try to teach your dog to bite. Don't go buy a sleeve on the internet. Don't go like do this on your own. This is a highly specialized sport that has been developed over decades. There are very specific ways that you have to train this. And training out of pure aggression is not the way to do it. You need to learn the prey and play drive. And it's really cool. There are IGP, I mentioned Mondio ring, French ring. There are a whole bunch of different bite sports that kind of have similar foundations and things all over the place. And they have clubs that you can join. And I encourage you, if you want to do something with your dog, and the reason I bring people like this on the podcast, everybody I bring on the podcast, I want to encourage you to do something with your dog because it's going to make your dog live longer. It's going to make your dog live happier. It's going to make there's, you think you love your dog. If you're just a dog that has an Aussie as a pet, which is nothing wrong with that. Okay, guys, nothing wrong. Um, and you think you love your dog and you think y'all have a good relationship, take him to do something, a sport, nose work, tracking, IGP, obedience, herding, whatever it is, and engage with that for a year and do the work. You will not understand the depth of the relationship you have with the dog. You think it's good now, it's nothing compared to when you engage in something and do the work. And develop trust and have a dog that's off leash that for me, like having a dog that was off leash was like epic. And I'll tell you, I didn't dream about Aussies when I thought they were the ugliest dogs I'd ever seen the first time I saw them. I wanted a golden retriever. And I didn't get that because we didn't know, but when I was a kid, like breeders and stuff like that, we just went to the shelter and got this dog that was brown. It was like a husky cross, and it was totally not interested in anything. Talk about a cat. And they would run away. We got her litter mate, and they'd run away, and they had litter mate syndrome, and it was terrible. And I met this lady who had an Aussie, my mentor, and I thought they were kind of ugly. They didn't have a tail, and I'm like, ugh, But then what made me fall in love with them was watching her work her dogs and her dogs adoring her and not ever running away and being off leash. Like I could never do that with the dog I had. And so why I encourage you to do this is just, you can understand what I'm saying, right? Like you understand that
Oh
depth
my
of
God.
that relationship.
I'm loving every second of this because this is exactly what it's about.
Hmm.
It's about this feeling of just the connection. And I'm now going to go a bit woo-woo, but it's the real heart-heart connection.
Oh yeah.
And it's just this feeling that you and your dog are actually linked. And I use my breath a lot with my dog's breath, and they can understand
Hmm.
how I'm feeling and what I'm wanting. And this feeling is the bond is just so beautiful. And for me, the striving and the commitment that it takes to train a dog to this level is actually this is what it's about. It's not about the ribbons, although obviously they're lovely, and it's not about the wins. It's about the amount of work. Like, because Gracie, she knows how much work, and the amount of work is incredible. It's, traveling to different
Hmm.
countries, it's going to see different helpers, it's, 5 a.m. starts, different tracking land. It's constant travel,
Hmm.
it's constant training and finessing training,
Hmm.
and the amount of, and that's so hard. And Aussies love doing hard things. If
Hmm.
you think your Aussie is enjoying your easy life, try doing something hard with them because
Oh yeah.
they love fixing problems. They love overcoming things. They love that feeling of challenge, of, yes, I'm doing this hard thing and I can do it. And it's so beautiful when you have that feeling of you and your dog, you're
Hmm.
doing this epically hard thing and it hurts so much. It's like been so much work. And afterwards, it's like just the look on you and your dog's face, you're like, oh my God, we did this thing.
That's right. That's
And
right.
just the strongest bond in the entire universe. And the love, like the huge amount of connection and love, it's just an absolutely indescribable, beautiful, beautiful feeling. And that's what it's
It
about.
is. And I have my ribbons in front of me. And I don't take all the ribbons sometimes because I have enough but each one is not about like, oh, this was the win. Yeah, those wins are awesome. I'm competitive. I love playing the game. Okay. But each ribbon has a memory. And it's not the memory of sitting there at the award ceremony getting the win. It's the memory of maybe something happened at the hotel room that was awesome that night, or maybe the we did something we've never done before, and we accomplished something. We beat a dog we've never beat before, and we've come off balance and did this thing that was we've never done before. And every single one of them is a memory of a trip, it's a memory that you and your dog have
Adventures, right? It's
together.
adventures with your dog.
It's adventures with your dogs. And so whatever adventure, and this is why we love it so much, guys. It's not all about winning. If you feel like, oh, I'm not a type A personality, well, you're gonna have a hard time with an Aussie if you're not a type A personality because they match like our personality so much. Um, but it's about having adventures. You don't have to win. I have a couple of small ribbons that are not fancy that I keep because there's a memory associated to that. When I leave the trial arena, I know what score we should have earned. Whether we get it or not from the judge, whatever. I know what we should have. I don't care. I don't care. I know the score we earned. I know what we did that was better than last time. I know, that's part of the journey as well, too, right? Like it's not about winning. It's just
This is beautiful because this is exactly what I teach. I've got a mindset mastery program, and this is exactly what I'm teaching is it's not about the winners, because it's like a winning mindset is people like, right, it's no matter what happens, I'm going to win at all costs. And there
Hmm.
are people who do that and who are like,
Hmm. Yes, and they cheat and
right?
they lie and they backstab and they hurt, and I don't want to win that way. That's not winning.
Unethical, and they're
Mm-mm.
doing horrible things to their dog. And at the end of the day, I just think they haven't won. Like
Nope.
I look at some of the people with that mindset in various sports, and I just think I wouldn't have that. No thanks, not for me. I
Nope.
wouldn't want that win. That wouldn't be mine.
Correct. And you
I
know
would.
what? Yeah, and that's just not that, because then they go around hurting other people, they slander you, they do things, and just ugh, it's just awful. And so, yeah, the whole mindset of winning is important too. I really appreciate all that. That is just awesome. I just love this conversation. When you're talking about woo-woo stuff, the herding thing that I do is very spiritual. And I talk to people about it in that way. And I don't care. Someone will look at me and go, well, you probably can't, sorry, I don't want to sound this way, but I don't, you're missing out. If you don't understand the spirituality of it, working with sheep and a dog and a person, and that dog has to take care of those sheep, that's their job. And then learning how the sheep's bubble works and how your bubble works. In order for you to communicate to your dog, you have to become a stronger person. With these dogs, they're pushy. They'll push into you. They're pushy, pushy dogs. You have to be able to push out your energy and you have to become stronger. You have to grow as a human, and they can take you in any sport. Just happens to be my specialty is this one. But in any sport, they're here to teach you something, and they will make you a better person if you follow. If you step into that, if you decide to grow to be a better leader for them, to be a better partner for them, to be all the things that they are, this can grow you. I'm a better person because of dogs and because of
Beautiful.
the mentors I found that have taken me and said, here, grow, here, do this, be better. And, that's the spirituality of it. And we're all connected. And this world is a spiritual world as the further along we go, I think we're all kind of coming to that conclusion. But I've seen people get confidence that is unbelievable. They'll come in with a dog that is supposed they have one lady now, and she's the sweetest. She's so worried about her dog being aggressive and like reactive to other dogs. And that dog came in here and had no, I was like, bring it on. Don't worry, we can deal with it. Our community is very supportive here. We'll fix all these problems. We've all been there. The dog came in, hasn't growled one time, hasn't raised her hackles one time. She goes in and works, and I'm working with this lady was very shy and very kind of reserved. And this dog is a female Aussie with kind of a dominant type personality. I'm like, look, you're gonna have to be stronger. You're gonna have to pull that from inside of you and show her this. And she's just eating it up, and I didn't really know exactly what was going on until the last time she was here. uh she's in a bigger area with her dog, and she's working her dog, and she's got this smile on her face like nothing. It's just like this amazing beautiful smile. And I'm like, that is it. That is the connection. That is the joy. That is the you can let go. You can learn to let go of your burdens and all the crap you carry with you if you let them lead you down that path. So you're not going to go too woo woo on me, because I am
That's
all
great.
about that.
You're all there. Yeah. And it's fantastic. It's exactly as you say. It's a journey into ourselves, into trust, into connection, and into I also say just letting go of preconceptions, because none of us know what the journey, what the road's going to be. And a lot of us get hung up on what we think it should be. We think our dogs should be working like this. We think that their behavior should be like this. We think they shouldn't have noise, blah, blah, blah. All the things that we think should be the case. And then when we're able to sort of let that go and watch the unfolding of, okay, let's see who is this person? Let's get curious. Who is this Aussie? And how can we work closer together? And
Mhm.
get really curious, connected, and close with our dogs. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And actually,
Yes.
I think you're much more likely to win with that sort of mindset anyway, because with the first mindset of I'm going in to win, you've got too much pressure. You've got no chance.
Yeah, and usually you take it out on your dog. and
Oh,
blame
God.
your dog. And those people that have that mindset like that usually are the ones that make the most mistakes and then blame their dogs for the mistakes.
Exactly. They're
And I'm the
blaming.
first one that will call you out on it. I'm like, no,
Yes,
that was your fault. And I'll
exactly.
make mistakes out there, and I'll be like, oh, sorry, buddy, that was mine. I'll take. And the thing I like about this breed too that I've seen is they want to have that connection, and they're so intelligent and they're so observant of your feelings and your small movements that people a little bit get in trouble for anthropomorphize. Oh, I can never say that word. Making them like humans when they're not, right? Um, because they're so connected to us and they feel more human than any other breed. And they're not. You have to be careful not to cross that line, but you can fully enjoy that full amazing connection. They're not
I
human, but
disagree
they're
right
hard
there.
to
Can I
not
disagree with
be.
you, Jackie? Is that
Uh-oh.
okay?
No, it's fine. You
No.
can I don't care. We can still be friends too. We can still be friends too.
Right?
Yeah,
That is a sign of grown-ups.
that's right. That's right.
So I think that anthropomorphizing is absolutely fine because dogs do have the emotional intelligence of a toddler and they've got a huge range of emotions, especially our Aussies who are incredibly sensitive to us. And I think if we do think more, oh, would I do that to a toddler or a person, let's say a person who doesn't yet understand the rules? Would
Yeah.
I do then it kind of
Well,
brings light onto what we're doing.
yeah, I kind of agree with you. I agree with you on that part of it. The part that we still need to remember, they are dogs and they have specific dog needs that we have to make sure we meet their dog needs.
Oh yeah.
And some people will cross the line too far into the. I mean, I talk to mine constantly. Like if I'm driving down the road, we're having full-on conversations, and I feel like they say they're intelligent as toddlers, but I don't know very many toddlers that are as smart as these dogs. Like I think they're smarter. We talked about that in the last podcast I did with Tom Collins, that I think that they're way smarter than a toddler because they can make decisions
I think
with
it's the
understanding.
emotional intelligence of a toddler. I think it's the emotional intelligence, but
Maybe that's it, yeah.
they know a hell of a lot more words. Of course, they know hundreds
And
of.
able to make decisions better. I think with experience and with understanding, like, yeah, I mean, toddlers that could go out and figure out how to get a sheep out of two sides of a fence, or anything outside of, so like, I think they're smarter than that. But I agree with you on the sensitivity. If you become sensitive to them, then you're better able to meet their needs and communicate with them better.
Yeah,
So
and I
they're
think a
just,
lot of people are very hard on them, and I think that often just worries them as opposed to making them feel more confident and more good. Because I think the more confident we can have them feeling, and the more good we can have them feeling about themselves, actually, the more likely they'll be able to exercise that degree of
mhm,
impulse control,
yeah,
which you will need for your herding for sure. And
yeah,
we need all the sports really.
yes,
There's all degrees of impulse control. Like, I know you secretly want to do this, but can you
yeah.
just do this one first?
You cannot bite right now. Yes, it is true. And I think that makes them better dogs and easier to live with too if they have something to do. Obviously, guys. So talk a little bit about your mindset for dog sports membership and your dog sports coaching program.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. So basically, what I'm doing is I'm doing all the good things really that we've just sort of discussed. It's having people feeling more confident. So often folks will come to the program because they feel nervous. We've had some people in the herding Aussie community joining us because they feel nervous before trials, for example. And when people are nervous, they do things which are weird, which they wouldn't do in training.
I
And
like that. That are weird. You're like, what are you doing?
exactly. Their dogs are like, I've heard that one. Like the person who sort of suddenly starts shouting their cues because they're feeling under pressure. And their
Or they
dog's like,
stop walking. In herding, they stop walking. You're like, keep going.
right. And people do all sorts of strange things when they're feeling under pressure, when they're
Hmm.
feeling nervous. So often folks will come to us in order to find techniques to basically make themselves feel calmer, more relaxed about competing. And those ways go from things like nervous system regulation to my background is in yoga and mindfulness. So I've done that
Okay.
now for years. And it really helps, just this element of finding a mindful pause, finding ways of using the breath to control ourselves. Because in dog training, it's common to talk about reactivity. But in human training, who talks about reactivity? We're also reactive, right? So
Yes,
it's
we are.
controlling our emotions.
Uh-huh.
And how can we expect our dog to be able to perform well or understand their training if
Mm-hmm.
we're getting angry, frustrated, irritated,
Louder. Yeah.
right? All these things that come up
Mm-hmm.
for people when they're training and competing. And part of the program is very, very strongly not, it's not saying that nobody's wrong for having these feelings. It's not wrong
Mm-mm.
because it's very human, it's very understandable. We all of us struggle with difficult feelings. There
It's
are
part of the
so many.
process.
Finding a safe space, a safe community to be
Mhm.
able to vent because it's not appropriate to do so at a trial and it's not appropriate to do so with your dog. So it's a place to vent and then to give ourselves a little bit of softness, a bit of compassion to be like, yes, I feel like this and it's okay. And then we're able to find that pause, to find that breath,
Mm-hmm.
relax into who we really are, which isn't that small, angry, frustrated person. We're really this huge, expansive,
Mm-hmm.
connected person who is walking in love with our dog.
Mm-hmm.
And that's our real selves, but we kind of forget that when we enter the trial field or we're in this stressful situation.
Right. And I'll tell you a secret that I don't know where this came from, if it just popped into my head or whatever. I was sitting at a trial one time, we're watching a new person working stock, and she froze. And we're like, keep walking, and the sheep were with her. Like at the beginning, you just fetch them around so they're with you. And they just froze. And the person next to me expressed great frustration. I'm like, what are they doing? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, wait a minute. Do you remember? It wasn't that long ago when I went in there, we have a 10-minute time limit. It felt like it went like this. And it was total chaos and everything was happening and the sheep were running 100 miles an hour and everything was just spinning and it's so fast and you're just like, but now when I go in, 10 minutes feels like an eternity. The last time I trialed, it was this nice, slow moving thing and it was perfectly, going. And I'm like, man, this is taking forever, man. We're going to run out of time. And I walked out and I said, how long was our time? Oh, it was 2 minutes and 50 seconds. So here's the secret. Time expands. When you're a beginner, everything goes a million times, like so fast. You can't even think. Your brain can't process, no matter what sport it is, no matter what you're doing, even if you're not doing dog sports, like this is life, right? Everything is going so fast and your brain just can't process it. It's made worse by emotional issues, like you were saying. If you can calm yourself, it'll go faster. You just have to get through the suck. You have that part sucks, right? Like you just have to get through that. And if you keep growing and you keep training and you keep getting better, like you can stay in that place forever if you want to, and you don't, you will. There are some people who do and never get better. That's your choice. But if you keep pushing yourself and you keep pushing forward, you'll go in there and time will slow down. The sheep don't run as fast. The cows don't run as fast. You can think, you have plenty of time to think about your commands and your flanks and your things. Everything just expands. And 10 minutes feels like 2 hours, whereas before it felt like 2 seconds. So, like, that's the secret of getting better at any of these things, where in any sport, I'm learning how to ride horses now. And I'm going back to that same thing where it's like, and I watched my coach ride my horse, and I'm like, it's going so slow for her. Like like it's not making her nervous, and the horse is moving slow. But when I get on him, it's 100 miles an hour. Well, he's not changing. I am not used to this yet. So, like, I know from experience it's going to get better. So that's the secret. If you stick with it, time changes. It changes. It's flexible. And I mean, I think that's a quantum physics thing now anyway, but stick with it. Stick with it.
I want to say two things around that because I love that observation. The first thing I'm going to say is, in my experience, what you're talking about is flow.
Mhm.
And flow
Yes.
state is a state which basically this is what my training is. This is how to get to flow.
Mhm.
And flow state is that sense of timelessness, this
Mhm.
sense of I'm doing this hard thing, but it all feels under a healthy striving
Mhm.
and absolutely in my control. You kind of feel telepathic. Oh, I know
Mhm.
that this is going to happen here and this
Yes.
happens. and you don't consciously think of things, it's a beautiful, beautiful state. And the second thing I'm going to say is it's really hard. And there are some people who have been doing their sports for 30 years and it doesn't happen.
Mhm.
And so they need some help getting there.
Correct.
And also we can help with that.
Yes, if you're not getting
Right.
better, if you're not progressing or you hit a wall, like sometimes we'll hit plateaus, and that's when I go find a coach. I go
Mhm.
find there's a lot of people better at this than me. So when I hit a plateau, I go find a coach and then I work on those things. And then I go to the next one. I may go back to that person or a different person, depending on what my needs are. So if you are hitting a plateau in your anything sport, go find a coach. Join this mindfulness coaching program that you have. I'm sure you'll take people from the US, right?
Well, we've got people from US,
Mm.
Canada, from New Zealand,
Perfect.
Australia, all around the world, all the European
Yep.
countries, everywhere.
And I have
Oh,
listeners from all over the world. So you
oh,
guys,
and
this is
loads of Aussies there.
yes, loads of Aussies. She would
My
probably
community.
love to have more Aussie people, but this is the thing. And if you're working with a trainer that doesn't get this, you can still get things from them, but you have to also be aware that if you're not progressing, it doesn't mean they're a bad person, but I don't have the same mentor that I had when I first started. I got what I needed, and they're my bestest friend in the whole world, but I go to a different mentor now because this is a different level. You know, you have to go where you need to go. And by doing that, it elevates, like, what is that saying that says rising waters raise all the ships? Like, even if you go somewhere else, we're all connected, right? You getting better is going to bring somebody else up.
Absolutely.
So I have loved this conversation, and I was not expecting this when we had, but anytime I do a podcast, I always find something pop up that is unexpected, and I love it. And I don't plan. I have a very vague plan. Let's talk about dogs. And I want to make you look good. I want to make my guests look good. I want the breed to look good. That's the goal of this conversation. And to have bring up these and all these things that are important that need to be said come out. And it's just like this whole conversation felt kind of in the flow to me, you know. So,
Absolutely. It's so lovely. It's so lovely to talk to you. Just hearing like-minded people
yeah.
talking so passionately
Oh,
about
yeah.
the things we love, connecting with this hugely amazing telepathic breed. And
Hmm.
so it's really wonderful and beautiful. And it makes me so sad to see, the folks who are like, oh, how can I get my dog to stop? And it's always this stuff with Aussies, isn't it? And you probably do loads of stuff with the rescues as well. And we see loads of stuff with rescues where it's like people just haven't been able to harness this amazing intelligence that the dog's got. So it's like, oh,
Mm.
yeah.
It makes me feel sorry for the dogs. Like I feel bad for them. Like, oh, you're stuck with a rock that's trying to train you, or whatever. We just the whole goal is just to be better and these conversations are going to help people. And, eventually people will come back to it and say, hey, I want to get better. How do I do it? And we've talked about many ways today to do better things. And I think it's so cool that we have so many similarities in two sports that are polar. Like there's nothing really the same of these sports and these dogs, and in my world, I can't take it would hurt those dogs to come to herding and it would hurt herding dogs to go to that sport because of the so different of our sports, but the amazing capability of these dogs and that they can excel and be a world like make German judges impressed with your Australian Shepherd off-breed fluffy dog. Like that's pretty epic. I mean, that's
Eating the Malinois? Yes.
what? Yeah.
Eating the Malinois, yes.
Yes, beating the Malinois and whenever it happens occasionally when Aussie will beat a border collie in a herding thing, and that is epic too. Because they're totally different breeds. They're totally different, night and day. But I have really enjoyed you coming on. And what I want to do is I'll have you I think you've emailed me some things, but if you want to email me links to videos that I can put in the show notes and send out with everybody to check out your dog working, because guys, I watch the videos. It's really good. It's really, really good. It's not just Aussie good, it's dog good. All dog good. So
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Thank you.
I'm proud of you. So keep it up. And I hope that we talk again soon because this was a great conversation.
Me too. Thank you so much, Jackie.
Yeah, you're welcome.